Hi, this is Esther with Discover Your Origins. I had attended a conference or workshop some time ago in which the presenter said that if you can't find your ancestor in the census, you're just not looking right or hard enough. Because according to her, nearly everybody in the country was counted when the census was taken. The reality is really pretty far from that. There are a lot of people that were missed, and there are various reasons in each year the census was taken of why people were missed. But if you can't find your ancestor, there are some research strategies that you can use to definitely find them or not find them. And I'm going to explain Colby Ross, because he is a person that I can't find in the 1870 census. So let's look at his sources here. So we can find Colby Ross in the 1830, the 1840, the 1850, the 1860 census, and then the 1880 census. And one of the research strategies that people recommend is that you try to find your ancestor in every census that was taken. So it is really kind of important that we try to find him in the 1870 census. And that is a rather important census year for the southern states for different reasons, but we have not been able to find him. So there are various research strategies that you can use to try to make sure that you find your ancestor, or maybe you don't, but at least you'll know for sure that they're not there. So one of them is to search the census using name variations. And I'm not going to demonstrate that in this video because I've done one previously, and I will link to the article. But you may need to search using nicknames, initials, various types of spelling. And I have some examples in this article that I wrote previously on Stewart or Stewart, which was spelled two different ways, of different name variations that you can use when you're searching the census for your ancestor. Another research strategy is to look at the previous years and the census before and after the one that you're trying to find your ancestor in. So let's look at the 1860 census. One of the things that is helpful when looking at the census is in the previous year is to look at, the enumeration district and also look at the neighbors. So here's Colby Ross right here in the middle, and he's a farmer. So I want to look at his neighbors who are also farmers. And so, I've got a Robert Jones, a James Creighton, and then I've got an Andrew Faulkner, and a Robin Burke. So you want to look for these people in the 1870 census. You also will want to look at the 1880 census, because I know that he's in the 1880 census. So if people moved between 1860 and 1880, or if they didn't move, they should be still neighbors. So let's look at the 1880 census. And the 1880 census is in some ways a little bit better to look at because the enumeration districts were similar, at least in Alabama. So Township 1, Range 4. And who are his neighbors? Let's find Colby. Okay, he's right here at the bottom, Colby Ross with his wife Tabitha. And they are in the household of Colby Ross's stepson, Mike Reed. And you can look at the neighbors. There's a Catherine Hughes. I looked for this James Smith. There's another Gilbert Hughes, Paralee Stovall. And then I also looked on the next page because it kind of goes on to the next page. Okay, we have Elizabeth Duke. And, you can look for any of these people. Like Isaac Wilson, he's old enough and a farmer. He would have been not too far and probably didn't move from the area. So look for these people in the 1870 census. And when I did that, I did find some of those people. So, the 1880 census listed an Elizabeth Hughes, and I did find her in the 1870 census. But I did not find any of Colby Ross or his family in 1870 so far. I have a few other research tips on my article that goes along with this video about searching for your missing ancestors in the 1870 census. Look at the 1870 mortality schedule for the county that you're looking at to see if maybe the person had passed away. In my case, Colby Ross had not passed away, or any of his family, so they weren't listed in the 1870 mortality schedule. Expand your search to neighboring counties because it's possible that people moved. And then also try a broad general search of the entire census year because maybe they moved further away than expected. You can try searching in different databases. So Family Search and Ancestry have used different indexers to index the same record, and the indexes are a little bit different. And so sometimes you may find something in Ancestry easier than you would in Family Search or vice versa. And then the last thing that we did to try to find Colby Ross is that we read every page of the 1870 census for Limestone County, Alabama, and I was unable to locate him or any of his family members. And there were some other people who lived in the rural areas of Lauderdale County that I've also not been able to find. So William Jasper Eaton is somebody that we would really love to find in the 1870 census. He was only 10 years old, an orphan. He should have been living with his grandmother. She's not in the census either. Duncan Stewart is somebody that I have a lot of interest in Lauderdale County, and he's not listed in the 1870 census either. So that kind of begs the question is why were there people missing in the southern states in the 1870 census? So first we have to kind of explain why this census is so important. And the National Archives has a really great article about this. They talk about how the 1870 census is the first census to name or identify African Americans by name. So these are the newly freed slaves who are finally named and counted on the census, which is amazing for African American family history research. One of the problems with the southern states is that the government used U.S. Marshals from the northern states to go into the southern states to count the people, and they appointed assistant marshals to help them because, it's a fairly large job. Many of the assistant marshals were barely literate. They struggled with reading and writing. And in some counties and cities across the country, the marshals did not count people properly. So one story is that in New York City, instead of going into the tenements to count the people, they would stand outside of the building and count the windows and then write up made up names into the census record. And it was enough of a controversy that President Grant ordered a recount of 3 cities because the numbers just didn't add up like they should have. And so New York City, Philadelphia, and Indianapolis were recounted in 1870. So there were 2 counts in some cities, and so there are discrepancies between those 2. But the southern states, when you consider that somebody came from the north into the southern states where there's already a lot of animosity between the north and the south, that people would avoid talking to the marshals, or the marshals themselves didn't want to exert enough effort to make sure they counted everybody. So, for example, if nobody was home when they stopped at a person's house, they didn't go back, and that's a possibility. So for what I can tell of the 1870 census in Limestone County and Lauderdale County is that the majority of the people were counted in the major population centers of Athens and Florence. And then it seems to be a little bit more sporadic in the rural areas. So there were people who lived in the rural areas that were counted, but not probably everybody. And that's the people that are missing. There is some evidence to believe that it as high as 10% of the people of the southern states were not counted in the 1870 census. And I've definitely have evidence of people who are missing that should have been there. Colby Ross for sure is one that's missing, and as well as some others. So if you are struggling with not finding your ancestor, be sure to read my blog article on searching for missing ancestors in the 1870 census. Some reasons that people might have been missed is they were traveling that day or not at home. They moved. The enumerator missed them intentionally or otherwise. There are instances in which pages of the census are missing. They were not filmed or otherwise digitized, and there is some ways to kind of check for that by going directly to the National Archives. A person may have dodged or avoided the enumerator, and it's also possible that your ancestor was a casualty of the Civil War. So, if they died previous to 1869, then they just wouldn't be in the 1870 census. So I have some resources linked for some additional information and blank copies of the form if you're wanting to do an in-depth study of the 1870 census. So be sure to look for the link in the description box below. Thanks for watching.